Hey, what's up everyone? This is Michael from ShadowTraffic, and today I'm going to be helping you get up and running with a basic program and just do a hello world and get you set up and teach you the workflow. So the first thing that we're going to need is a license file. So I'm in a fresh directory. I'm going to go ahead and touch a file called license.env. And when you sign up for ShadowTraffic, you get an email with your license keys. And so I'm going to go ahead and fill out mine. All I do is I copy and paste what's in the email. I don't need to do anything more than that. And then the only other thing that I need to actually get started with ShadowTraffic is to give it a configuration file to tell it what data to actually produce. And so I'll touch a file called helloworld.json. There's nothing in it yet, but I'm actually going to go ahead and run ShadowTraffic straight away. And so I'll explain this command. I've got docker run. I give it an environment file with the license key so it knows to unlock. And then I'm going to mount in my configuration file. So -v says put a volume mount. I've got hello world, and I'm going to mount it into the home config path, and then the container name, ShadowTraffic latest, and then the flags to the actual program. There's only one here. I have --config, and I give it the volume mounted path to my configuration file. Before I run it, I'm going to add 3 non-mandatory paths for the sake of development to just make it easier to work with. And so I'm going to give it --standard out, which tells it to ignore any backends that I hook it up to, and instead take all generated data and just spit it out to the command line. You're going to see in a minute how this is really convenient for being able to figure out whether your data generator is doing what you want it to do. I'm also going to say, instead of producing an indefinite number of events to my backend, I'm just going to print out 5 samples. Again, this is really nice for just checking whether it works. And then the last little utility that I'll use for development is watch, which means it'll restart the data generator whenever my configuration file changes. And so I'm going to go ahead and run that, even though I don't have anything yet in my configuration file. And it says, couldn't parse your configuration file, it's not valid JSON. Well, yeah, it makes sense. And I'm going to run through a couple of errors just so you get an idea of what ShadowTraffic looks like when things aren't quite right. And so the message says it's looking for a valid object. That's fine. Well, I'll add an object to the file. And now I'm getting somewhere. ShadowTraffic says you have 2 configuration errors. I need generators and I need connections. And so again, I'm going to do something that's not quite right just so you get an idea of how it looks when it's producing errors. And so generators, I'm just going to supply the value of false, which is not right. And for connections, I'll just supply an array. These are incorrect types, but you can see how it responds. ShadowTraffic says that the path of generators, cool, that makes sense, found a Boolean and expected an array. And the same for connections. It tells you what the right types are. And so you can kind of see how when you have something that's incorrect in your data structure, you just look at the key path and you figure out what the error actually is. And so I'm going to skip over typing some more of this, and I'm going to replace this connections object with something that I've already filled out. ShadowTraffic is made to send data to your real backend. And so I'm supplying a connection here. It's a map of names to connection types. And so I call this connection PG. It's a Postgres connection that connects to my local host. Pretty basic setup. It doesn't actually matter at this stage if you're following along whether these configuration details are right and whether there's a Postgres instance here. And the reason is that I supplied that --standard out flag when I started ShadowTraffic. That just says ignore any backends that you're sending the data to and just send it standard out. And this is really nice if you're just not ready to do that yet. I find it really easy just to develop this way. And so now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a generator. And you create a series of generators depending on what you want to do. And so I'm going to make one. I'm going to give it an empty map. I'll go ahead and run it. Now the connections correspond to the generators. If you want to send data to Postgres, it has to be Postgres data. And so there's a few ways you could do that. You could supply the connection name. You could say connection is PG. And so it obviously explicitly names it as a Postgres connection. But if there's only one, you don't have to say it. And I'm just going to leave it out, and it's going to infer that this is a Postgres generator. And so when I look at the errors back from ShadowTraffic, I see 2 things. I see I need required keys table and row. And that makes sense because that's where I want to actually put my data for Postgres. And so I'll have maybe a users table. And for row, I don't know what I'm going to do yet. I'll just do nothing. Rows. And for row. And now what I get are my 5 events. Remember I said sample double minus sample 5. It produces 5 events. It stops. It's waiting for changes. And so this is the most boring data that you can have. There's no data. It just says, here's 5 events. Each of them goes to the users table and there's nothing. Well, I want to do something more interesting than that. I want to say, here's a name and my name is Michael. And so it's just producing constants at this point. Here's 5 events that all look exactly the same. When we use ShadowTraffic, we want to emulate our production data set. And so there's a whole bunch of generator calls out of the box that I can use. And so when I say underscore gen, I might say I want to generate a string. And well, what kind of string? What do I want the string to look like? I can tap into Java Faker here. I can say, here's a template, do a name and give me a full name. When I run this, ShadowTraffic looks at it, it analyzes where there's calls anywhere with an underscore gen, and it goes ahead and invokes the right function for me. So now I have a couple of different names. I've got Birdie Fairy, I've got Herschel Andreka, all of these different things. And so I'm just going to do one more column in this row, just to give you an example of another data generator. And so here's a column for emoji. Now I have table users with 2 columns, name and emoji, and this gen says pick one of thumbs up, flame, or heart. I'll run that, and I see that I have all the different emojis being picked one at a time. And this is a basic hello world. I'm going to turn off ShadowTraffic now, and I'm going to switch off the sample. And so now it's running toStandard out still, and I'll actually get rid of watch mode as well. But I'm just going to run it, and you'll see ShadowTraffic's main purpose is to sit here and just indefinitely produce data. And in the next video, we're going to hook this up to a live Postgres backend. We're going to hook it up to Kafka in the future. And yeah, that'll be the topic for our next video. Looking forward to seeing you there.